Yo, what up everyone? Xspartan 1000 here, and we are back with another Star Ocean the Divine Force build video. We're going to be talking about Malkya. So she is a hybrid DPS for anybody who's not sure about it, and I know it can seem like her magic damage is like far superior to her attack moves, and you probably shouldn't even be concerned with doing those. There's actually a lot of usage for her doing both, and it's very situational, and we're going to get into those specific situations while we're looking at her actual skill paradigm. So for the stats, the rundown is going to be: don't be too concerned with HP as she stacks up a bunch anyhow. Skip out on the defense and guts as you are specking through the tree. You should be fine. She's one of the characters that comes with a lot of invincibility in her kit, which means you're not taking any damage and it's completely free. You can abuse these mechanics to get out of sticky situations and then just use Duma for that, and use Duma to further escape or to dodge to just go for another escape route opportunity instead of wasting time on defense, guts, and HP. You can spend that instead on strengthening skills, getting closer to the skills that you actually need for the build, and then of course leveling up crafting skills for late game building. Um, let's jump into we'll jump into the skill tree first. So this will be the overall shape for it, and I'll briefly go over everything that I haven't covered. You can see that there's a lot of defense and guts ignored, and then there's a few skills that aren't covered as well. So we'll go over the actual combat skills and passives at the same time. So for this combat skill, the reason why I didn't grab this one is because I believe most parties, especially if you're playing the DPS and you want to do the most damage possible, you should have Nina in your party because her damage buff will stack with the buffs that you are applying to yourself. So Nina is a far superior healer to Malkya. So I highly recommend just, even if you have Malkya and Nina in the party, you don't need this move. I mean, if you don't have Nina in the party, then this probably is more worth it, but I don't think you should sacrifice her HP just to do a smaller heal towards other people. I think Nina's is far more worth it. It has a larger AoE than this, and she has one that she can leave in a specific area. She can also cover defensive raising purposes, damage raising purposes for both physical and magic, and she can raise guts as well. So I don't think this move is worth it overall. I think this is an easy skip. Counterattack signal increases max AP with successful well-timed dodge. Now this is very situational. If you are good at dodging, you can 100% get value out of this. But if you think you're god awful at dodging, this is a bad investment. Honestly, it's much safer to just use Duma because on the chance that you do dodge correctly, it may if you do dodge correctly and you blindside correctly, you're going to get a blindside and you dodge the attack. So that's super huge. Also, if you don't get the blindside, at least you still dodge the ability. You may not get the extra AP point, but if you're thinking about how you're casting your spells or using your abilities, AP management will get easier as the game goes on. Let's look at extend dodge. Now, this is one I actually do recommend grabbing. I just don't have it purchased because I was not controlling her. Extend dodge is one thing you want to use when you're using the character. Because if you do dodge well, you will get an invincibility window. Invincibility is huge. You'll be taking virtually no damage. And I was talking about her being a character that has invincibility mechanics in her build, so you don't have to worry about leveling up defense so much. Wildcat is one of those moves that can be abused as well to give yourself damage. You could 100% just spam Wildcat 3 times in a row, and for the duration of all those claw attacks, you will be dealing damage and taking none. It's pretty broken, and if you think about extend dodge, you can extend that even longer. And then in that case, if you're running extend dodge timer, then counterattack signal would be worth it. But since I was not using that for the majority of the campaign, I just forego that. But note that extend dodge can be useful. Crush is a earth spell that's dealing 130 int to start. Not bad damage, nothing like to be freaking out about either. I didn't grab this because if I was going to be concerned about dealing earth damage at a consistent amount, I would just run Midas or Albert. Both of them have more superior earth spells to Malkia. If you did want to go on a spell focused Malkia, not really using any melee, then this could be more worth it. But I believe Stone Rain does more damage anyhow to start, so I'd recommend going for Stone Rain over Crush anyway. So definitely, this looks like an easy skip. But if you just want to try to see what can come of that factor, when you level this move up, it does not increase the int that you get as the factor. It doesn't function the same way as Albert's Fireball or his Ice Sword. So I think this move's a skip. Leadership, increase the guts of all allies except the user. So the problem with this move is there's a mechanic that does this and it helps the user, and that is Nina's her guts raising ability. She gives it to everybody. So I don't think you need to worry about wasting your own AP, especially 5 AP, just to give everybody else a buff and not you a buff. This is the attempted support side of Malkia. I think they wanted to have 2 types of healers in the game, so you didn't feel like you were forced to have Nina. And this could be useful in conjunction with this heal move over here. But remember, you're not getting that guts that you're applying to everyone else, and when you go to use that heal, you're losing health to give everyone else health. So you got to be careful with how you go about healing your team. She's damaging herself to heal them. So if you're not careful with managing your health bar and how much damage you can take, you can find yourself knocked out. Next, looking at convert HP or AP. So you'll recover AP in exchange for HP. I'm not a fan of this either. It's again hindering to that more riskier sacrificial playstyle. You're giving up a big well of your. She has a big well of HP. To be fair, you're giving up some HP so you can do more abilities. But I'm always going to advocate for using your abilities correctly with the slots that you have, and then you'll get more out of it that way, and that way you don't have to lose any sort of health for it. So that way you won't require any heals from anyone else or spamming through your items. Stylish Dreamboat. So increase the effect of the factors for your armor basically. Now, if you don't have any armor at the time, this is not very useful, but when you get to late game crafting, this will be useful. So I would recommend picking this up, even if you are going a DPS build. You never know what you can end up getting for an armor factor. Extend dodge, especially if you're using her, could be very good for you as well. Going hand in hand, because you'll be getting invincibility windows, and then if you have a factor that's saying that you're taking less of an element damage, that'll be huge for you to stack up for a defensive playstyle. But since we were going for a more long range and or close range, abusing the invincibility with the melee, that's why I didn't pick this up earlier. So for vampire weaponry, so gives damage to all allies. If a target is blindsided, the AI controlled allies attack rate will go up. This is good, but it requires you to be using Malkya. And for my first campaign, I was focused on playing as Raymond only. This one I would recommend picking up as well, because everyone else is going to get a damage spike on top of what, say if you did Duma's S3 cage, you'd be double damage bonusing everyone else. So that would be pretty huge to have one as well. And then I believe that covers everything that I skipped over. Now for the things that I grabbed, we're going to go ahead and go through the strengthening skill phase after covering the passives. So again, note those passives that I skipped over, because you could throw those in here depending on how you're using her. With how I had her used in this campaign, I went with Clever Fighter. So again, we have when an attack-based strike lands a critical, you're going to get a portion of your magic damage added to your ATK. she has a good bit of magic damage. So whenever she does go for some sort of ATK move, it hits harder than the stats that you currently have are telling you. Especially if you max out Clever Fighter to its highest ability. Longer Punishment, I highly recommend this because there is a spell on her list, and I believe it's her best spell that she can cast, Deep Freeze. Deep Freeze will be able to freeze an enemy solidly in place. This will work on bosses. And I can't stress how useful that is, especially when you think about characters like Albert, who can slow the boss's movement and then hit him with a Demon's Gate, which is a singularity that's pulling him to a concentrated point. He will have to take every tick of the Deep Freeze, which I guarantee will freeze them solidly in place. Whenever I was doing the final boss on my stream, Malkya was freezing just about anything that was on the ground. I think the only one it didn't really work on was the aerial enemies, but anybody like grounded, they were getting frozen, and that's super huge for you, especially if even if you're not controlling Malkya and you just want her to do something very useful for the team. Spamming out Deep Freeze is it. It's such a useful spell. Auto healing is really good, especially if you're running one of those more sacrificial builds where you're sharing you're dropping your health to give it to other people, or dropping your health to add to your AP, or even if you're sacrificing your health to spell cast faster. And that brings me to a comment in one of my YouTube videos. They were asking, what do I think of this passive skill right here, the masochistic semiomancy? And I do think this is the one ability or skill where she's sacrificing her health where I think it is worth it. Fast casting is infinitely useful in Star Ocean because the spells that typically take super long to cast are the better ones. And it sucks that Malkya did not get fast cast like Midas has. I think they really cheesed her or cheated her out of some crazy damage potential for not giving her that. But if you were to level this up, you will see that you'll have to give up a decent amount of health. It's not nothing that'll reduce you to 50%, so it is worth going for. And that way you'll be able to get Deep Freeze off even faster. So honestly, a very disgusting damage loadout would forego the auto healing and then just go like this. And then of course you would max, I would say max the semiomancy one before Clever Fighter, especially if you really want to get that max damage off, because Deep Freeze will hit hard and it'll freeze the enemy in place for you, letting you follow up with a physical damage move up close. So looking at Deep Freeze at level 10, you are getting 294 int damage from it. It only costs 3 AP. That's nice. An area of effect, and then a factor down below, chance of causing frozen for 6 seconds. 6 seconds is a long time to be sitting there getting jumped by 4 people. So highly recommend that. Trathon's Royal Sword is another one to consider maxing. There is a reason for why I didn't max this spell first, or this ability first. It goes up to 267 damage, and its factor, you absorb 100% of the damage dealt. So that's pretty huge. To level this one up, highly recommend getting this one up there. It can go higher. At level 7, it's doing 267. I suspect at 10, it'll do around like 294, possibly 300. The reason why I did not max that move out first was because Crush Clap's factor is disgusting. So while we were talking about ailments earlier in her passive skills with longer punishment, because Deep Freeze is not the only thing you're going to be abusing with this character's kit. So the reason for why I did not level up the Trathon's Royal Sword is because of Crush Clap. So this ability is doing a decent amount of physical damage, but the real steal is that it's giving you a confused status effect on the enemy for 15 seconds. And if you have longer punishment on, almost every time she does this move, she's going to be putting the confused status effect on the enemy. And bosses are no exception. I've seen her do this move and the boss would just stop attacking us or just start walking away from the person he was focusing. And that is so huge. It's not locking them down in place, but it is stopping them from doing what they want to do. And from experience, I've seen with Confused, your teammates can friendly fire you. If your teammate is going to use a heal move, they will heal the enemy. So there is a chance that enemies will attack their other enemies. Instead of healing the other enemies, they'll end up healing you. So Crush Clap is something I highly recommend leveling up. It's a very seamless animation. She just strikes out in front of her, and then a person's confused. Other than that, I'd say go for Trathen's Sword immediately. So another move you could consider rushing as well would be Wildcat, and the reason for that is because of the invincibility that you will have for the entirety of this 3-attack claw combo. You'll be invincible the whole time, moving around, which will set you up for some decent positioning to get away from the enemy. It's an area of effect, so you will hit multiple enemies, and it's dealing a decent amount of damage starting at 90 and going up to 132. It only costs 1 AP, and that's why I say the damage is decent. It's decent for what it is. It can go higher than this damage, but this move is mainly to be abused for the invincibility. It's free. It's free damage basically. There's really there's no downside of it other than the fact that it's not, hitting something at a base of 200 ATK. You could follow up a combo of Wildcat with Shall We Dance, especially if they're caught in animation, because with Shall We Dance, you also have a chance to have an invisibility window, but it does wear off. Provides a moment of invincibility at the beginning. So if an enemy walks over and or if they're getting hit by this move, but they stop being, stunned by it about halfway through, they can hit you out of it. That's not the greatest, but in all technicalities, it's an AOE move, and if you do hit them, they're going to be stuck like this training dummy in the bottom right corner, getting hit multiple times. Damage is a lot better than Wildcat. It's starting off at 120. This definitely has the potential to get into the 200s, or at the very least late 190s. Not the craziest damage that she can put out for physical, but it's abusing the invincibility mechanic that you could also further abuse with your extend dodge. If you're doing a perfect dodge, you can get that good window up. After that point, then I would say Rising is another one to get for good physical damage. Good juggle combos can come from this. It's going to 220 at level 8, which is pretty nice. At 10, I suspect something around like maybe 230, maybe 240. Highly recommend going for this after maxing your big 3, which we'll go over again is Deep Freeze, the Trathen's Royal Sword, and Crush Clap. And that'll be your focuses. As for your active skills, I would say go for Spring of Wisdom. Spring of Wisdom, if you've seen any of the past build videos, this is just the magical version of Berserk. You are going to increase your magical damage while letting go of some regenerative properties that your Guts bestows upon you. So you'll be dealing insane magic damage. If you're doing a more melee-focused Malkya build, you won't have any use for Spring of Wisdom. Do not equip this ability if you're, not intending to cast magical spells, since I would be doing that some of the time, especially if I was controlling her. I would highly recommend leveling up as it goes to 80% for 10 seconds, but it'll last longer than 10 seconds if you have that Duma buff up as well. We already covered the passive skill, so we're good on that end. You can 100% go for her synchro skill as well to level that up if you wanted to towards the end. And that covers basically everything strengthening wise. We'll be going into chain combos now. For chain combos, I want to start with the Deep Freeze combo, because this one is probably the dirtiest thing she has to offer in her kit. So, especially if you're running that Semiomancy passive skill to cut down the cast timing, you can spam out Deep Freeze to freeze bosses in place or the enemies. Highly recommend putting on longer punishment as well, so you can really get those negative status ailments put on the enemies that you're fighting. Acid Rain was just a one-off move I decided to throw on. To be honest though, if you really want to make sure the AI is helping you the best they can, just stick to Deep Freeze and just nix this move entirely. Honestly, it's probably better to just have the AI know to do Spring of Wisdom so that they can get that extra damage off whenever they do go for magical spells. The rising move is one that you could clip this into a combo, like just have it into the main line of your combo. But you could also start one off by just juggling the enemy initially in the air and then switching to another character and starting a juggle combo in that fashion. Or finishing a combo like this and then going into the rising one. So I started this combo off with a bunch of crush claps because I wanted her to really get that confused status effect to stick, especially once I've seen it happening to bosses. I did have a combo where I had her using it 3 times in a row. It's minimal damage, but it's the effect that's the important thing. She's basically functioning as a controller of the battle more so than a DPS. She's providing a bunch of negative. She's basically hindering the enemies while dealing some small backup damage. So the boss or ads will not fight back with confused on, and if they do try to fight, they'll be fighting their own teammates. Deep freeze, they won't be fighting at all. They'll be completely locked into place. The Trathan's Royal Sword is a very weird animation. I believe it's a pretty slow one. Yeah, it's pretty slow, but it is straightforward. I think if you blindside an enemy, that is when you should go for this ability. Blindside them and then go ahead for it. It'll do some pretty good damage, and you'll absorb them and get a small heal back for it, or a decent sized heal if you do a good bit of damage. And then I wanted to abuse the invincibility because why not? Start off with Wildcat. It's only costing you 1 AP. Then go into Shall We Dance. You should be invincible the entirety of this, especially if you're only attacking one enemy at a time. This is free damage for a boss. Remember, you could just run Wildcat 3 times in a row, especially if you're focusing on melee only, because it'll actually start to seem like it's a more worth ability to do once you start considering all the damage buffs you'll have, because you'll be attacking for free. You can use this move even to escape harm. So even if you're not planning on doing damage, you'll be invincible for the entirety of that duration. And then you could also follow up with the Trathan Sword at the end. And that's pretty much how I would run her combos. You can definitely switch some stuff up. I do think intense, and for all intents and purposes, for this being used for the computer controlling her, having her spam Deep Freeze and Crush Clap and Wildcat is the best thing you can have her do, simply because she's not going to be taking any damage at all when she's doing Wildcat. And then whenever she does go for a longer range play to do damage to the enemies, what's it called? She'll be able to do so and actually give you a clear advantage through freezing the enemy solid in place. Last notes for this character: Purification could be useful. The only reason I didn't have this equipped is because, if you're unaware, Nina's Tingling Chimes, once it's maxed out, cures all status ailments. And since I think Nina is an essential member to a lot of damage build setups, or just supporting your group in a very easy way, Purification becomes useless, because Tingling Chimes is just going to, at max level, it cures all status ailments, so it just makes this just not even worth grabbing. You can just spend your points on something else. In terms of equipment, set her up hybrid style. Give her an accessory that's going to give you physical damage, and then give her another one that's going to give you magical damage. And that's, I'm speaking to the accessories. So we have one for attack and one for int. You can do the same thing for Albert and anybody else that you are doing a sort of hybrid build for. But yep, that'll wrap up Malkya's build video. I hope you guys enjoyed this. This will wrap up the level 90 builds to the end game, because JJ's build, you acquire JJ very late in the game. If you haven't seen his build video, I do have one up in this. The video that is up for him will count for his earliest acquisition, which is at the end of the game, and then the 255 beyond. The only thing that would change in the 255, area would be, of course, your statistics from leveling up that said character. Other than that, Leticia's build was also dropped later on, and I will review that one and see if she requires one, and I'll make a community post about it. But the next one that is on the radar for the future is to do one for Theo, and I'm going to be resuming the broadcast for Leticia's Chaos Mode playthrough, along with alternating streaming Midnight Sun. So that will come out in time, and that'll wrap up every character that needs a in-game build video. I hope you guys enjoyed this build video series. This doesn't mean it's the end for Star Ocean content. I will still be streaming this, so long as people are interested in watching, because I'm just a long time fan of this series. So I hope you guys enjoyed this build video series, and I hope you enjoyed the walkthrough series. If you haven't seen my Raymond walkthrough of Universe Mode, check that out. It's in the live section of the channel. The Leticia Chaos Mode playthrough is ongoing. Check that out. We're past the halfway point. If you've enjoyed this video, leave a like, comment what you thought down below, subscribe if you're new, and I will catch you guys in the next video.